Today, we're exploring every British experimental aircraft that ended in disaster, from unstable prototypes to deadly high-speed experiments that pushed pilots beyond the limits of survival. 1. Miles M52, United Kingdom, 1946. The Miles M52 was Britain's most promising shot at breaking the sound barrier before America ever got close. Designed under wartime secrecy, it incorporated a revolutionary all-moving tail and a near-perfect aerodynamic profile that American engineers later admitted influenced their own supersonic work. Yet in 1946, the British government canceled the program entirely, citing safety concerns and shifting political priorities. The data was handed to the Americans. Months later, Chuck Yeager broke the barrier in the Bell X-1, a design that bore striking similarities to what Miles had already solved on paper. Britain had the answer. It simply chose not to use it. 2. Avro Canada CF-105 Aero, United Kingdom, 1958. Though designed in Canada, the Aero was fundamentally a product of British aerospace philosophy and engineering culture, shaped by post-war British aviation doctrine. It was one of the most advanced interceptors ever conceived, Mach 2 capable, with extraordinary range and an integrated weapons system years ahead of its time. Then, on Black Friday in 1959, the Canadian government canceled it without warning. Every airframe was ordered destroyed. Engineers wept on the factory floor. No country has fully explained the political decision to this day, and the loss haunted British-influenced aerospace development for a generation. 3. Bristol Type 188, United Kingdom, 1962. The Bristol 188 was built for one purpose: sustained high-speed flight at Mach 2 and beyond, intended to gather thermal data for future supersonic aircraft. It looked the part: a long needle-nosed fuselage of stainless steel, twin engines buried in aggressive nacelles, and a silhouette that suggested raw speed. But the aircraft could barely reach the conditions it was designed to study. Its engines burned fuel so rapidly that by the time it approached the required speeds, it was already too low on fuel to sustain them. Pilots called it the flying dart. They meant it as a criticism. 4. Saunders Roe SR A1, United Kingdom, 1947. Britain emerged from the Second World War still believing that flying boats had a future in combat aviation. The SR-A1 was the logical conclusion of that belief, a jet-powered flying boat fighter, designed to operate from sheltered coastal waters without the need for airfields. It was actually a refined machine, handling reasonably well both in the air and on water. But the world had already moved on. The fall of Japan ended the Pacific theater where it might have served, and jet technology was advancing so quickly that a water-based fighter had no tactical future. 3 prototypes were built. One was lost in a fatal crash. The concept died quietly with it. 5. Avro 707, United Kingdom, 1949. The Avro 707 was a 1/3 scale research aircraft built to explore the delta wing configuration being developed for what would become the Vulcan bomber. Small, angular, and distinctly experimental in appearance, it served a genuine scientific purpose, gathering low-speed handling data that full-scale engineers could not yet safely obtain. But the program extracted a serious cost early. The first prototype, the 707, crashed and killed its pilot, Eric Esseler, in September 1949 during only its 4th flight. A faulty air intake design caused loss of control. The remaining variants continued flying, but the program never fully escaped that early shadow. 6. Short SB-5, United Kingdom, 1952. The Short SB-5 existed entirely to answer a question: how low could the sweep angle of a wing go before supersonic performance suffered unacceptably? It was a pure research tool, ungainly in appearance, designed with adjustable wing sweep so engineers could experiment across configurations. The aircraft itself flew safely enough, but what it revealed was deeply uncomfortable for the English Electric team designing the Lightning. Early data suggested the intended wing sweep was too aggressive for low-speed handling. The Lightning's design was modified as a result. The SB-5 never crashed, but it forced a fundamental rethink, which in aviation is sometimes its own kind of disaster. 7. Ferry Delta II, United Kingdom, 1954. On the 10th of March, 1956, the Ferry Delta II shattered the world air speed record, reaching 1,132 miles per hour, the first aircraft ever to exceed 1,000 miles per hour in level flight. It was a landmark moment in British aviation. The FD-2 was elegant, dart-like, with a distinctive droop snoot nose that lowered to give the pilot visibility on approach. But Britain did nothing with it. The technology was licensed to France, where it directly influenced the shape of the Concorde. The aircraft that gave Britain the speed record became the foundation of a French icon. The failure here was not mechanical. It was institutional. 8. Handley Page HP 115, United Kingdom, 1961. The HP 115 was a deliberately peculiar machine, a slender Delta research aircraft with an extremely low aspect ratio wing, built specifically to study the slow-speed flight characteristics that would be critical for any future supersonic transport. It looked almost absurdly thin from above, more like a paper aircraft than a serious flying machine. It flew for over a decade without a fatal accident, accumulating important data. Yet the lessons it taught were applied not to a British supersonic transport developed independently, but fed into the joint Anglo-French Concorde program. Britain contributed the science. The prestige was shared whether it wanted to be or not. 9. Back TSR-2, United Kingdom, 1964. No cancellation in British aviation history carries more grief than the TSR-2. It was a supersonic strike and reconnaissance aircraft of extraordinary ambition, capable of flying low and fast enough to defeat Soviet air defenses, with navigation systems and avionics that were years beyond anything flying at the time. It flew. It performed. Test pilot Roland Beaumont reported handling that exceeded expectations. Then, in April 1965, the Wilson government canceled it, citing cost overruns and changing strategic priorities. The airframes were ordered destroyed. Some were used as gunnery targets. The decision is still debated today as one of the greatest acts of institutional self-destruction in British industrial history. 10. Hawker Siddeley P. 1154, United Kingdom, 1965. Before the Harrier became a legend, there was its far more powerful and far more troubled predecessor. The P-1154 was a supersonic vertical takeoff aircraft designed to serve both the Royal Navy and the Royal Air Force simultaneously, a dual service requirement that ultimately proved impossible to satisfy with a single airframe. The Navy wanted one configuration. The RAF wanted another. The compromises required to bridge those demands pushed the design into territory that was simultaneously too complex and too expensive. The project was canceled in 1965 before a prototype ever flew operationally. The Harrier that followed was simpler, slower, and far more successful. The P.1154 is a lesson in what happens when military politics overrules engineering logic. 11. Armstrong Whitworth AW 52, United Kingdom, 1947. The AW.52 was Britain's serious attempt to explore the flying wing concept, an aircraft without a conventional fuselage, where the wing itself contained the crew, engines, and payload. The aerodynamic theory was compelling. The reality was far less so. Both prototypes suffered from severe longitudinal instability, a problem that made sustained controlled flight deeply uncomfortable and genuinely dangerous. In May 1949, test pilot John Lancaster became the first British pilot to eject from a jet aircraft, escaping the first prototype as it entered an uncontrollable oscillation. The second prototype flew on for a time before being grounded. The flying wing idea would not be revisited seriously for decades. 12. Supermarine Type 508 and 529, United Kingdom, 1951. Supermarine, the company that had given the world the Spitfire, spent the early 1950s trying to define what a naval jet fighter should look like, and the results were deeply uncertain. The Type 508 and its derivative the 529 were characterized by a butterfly V-tail arrangement and straight wings at a time when swept surfaces were already being proven superior. The configuration created unpredictable handling characteristics that never inspired confidence in test pilots. Neither type progressed to production. They represent a period when Supermarine, once the pinnacle of British fighter design, was visibly struggling to translate its propeller-era genius into the jet age. 13. Boulton-Paul P-111, United Kingdom 1950. The Boulton-Paul P-111 was a pure delta wing research aircraft, built to examine how a tailless delta platform behaved across a range of speeds and altitudes. It flew, and it flew reasonably well. But in August 1952, during landing at Boscombe Down, the aircraft suffered an undercarriage failure, and the subsequent crash seriously damaged the airframe. The aircraft was rebuilt in modified form as the P-111A and continued to fly, but the program's data, while useful, did not lead to any direct production aircraft. It sits in the record as one of many British experimental programs that gathered knowledge without generating hardware. 14. Fairey Rotodyne, United Kingdom, 1957. The Rotodyne was unlike anything else in the sky. A compound gyroplane designed to carry passengers and cargo between city centers without needing a conventional runway. It combined a fixed wing with a large overhead rotor for vertical takeoff and transition to forward flight. In testing, it performed well, comfortably ahead of its time in concept. But the rotor tip jets that powered its vertical flight phases produced a noise level described by observers near Heathrow as physically uncomfortable. Complaints from across West London accumulated. Airlines lost interest. Funding was withdrawn in 1962. The aircraft that might have invented the modern tilt-rotor concept was grounded by noise complaints. 15. Scottish Aviation Twin Pioneer, United Kingdom, 1955. The Twin Pioneer was a rugged STOL transport built for operations in remote terrain, serving RAF squadrons across Aden, Borneo, and East Africa. It was functional and genuinely useful in its intended role. But the aircraft suffered a series of fatal accidents through its operational life, several linked to engine failure on takeoff. The most critical phase of flight for any short takeoff aircraft, where altitude and airspeed margins offer almost no room for recovery. Investigations repeatedly pointed to the challenges of twin-engine management at low speed. The type was retired relatively early, its reputation marked by losses that undermined confidence in a design that had promised more. 16. Hunting H-126, United Kingdom, 1963. The H-126 was a dedicated research aircraft built to investigate jet flap technology, a system in which engine exhaust is directed over the wing surface to dramatically increase lift at low speeds. The concept was genuinely innovative, and the aircraft demonstrated the principle effectively. But jet flap technology never translated into a production program. The aerodynamic benefits were real. The mechanical complexity, fuel consumption penalties, and integration challenges were equally real. The H-126 flew its research sorties, delivered its data to the Ministry of Aviation, and then disappeared into storage. It was a solution to a problem the industry ultimately decided it could live without solving. 17. Avro Vulcan B-1 prototype, United Kingdom, 1952. The prototype that would become one of Britain's most iconic bombers was, in its earliest form, a genuinely dangerous aircraft to develop. The delta wing configuration of the Vulcan was so radical that early test flights exposed serious control problems at high altitude, where the aircraft's handling became unpredictable and at times uncontrollable. During development testing, the aircraft entered configurations that test pilots struggled to understand, let alone recover from. The lessons from those early flights drove significant redesigns before the Vulcan entered service. The bomb of the world came to admire was built on a foundation of near disasters that the official record largely kept quiet for years. 18. English Electric Lightning F1, United Kingdom, 1959. The Lightning was a triumph of speed and a catalog of compromise. It could climb faster than almost anything flying in the early 1960s, and its supersonic performance in British hands was genuinely world-class. But it carried fuel for barely 40 minutes of combat flying. Its weapons fit was thin by contemporary standards. The cockpit was cramped, the systems were demanding, and the margin between operational performance and disaster was uncomfortably narrow. several Lightning pilots were killed in accidents linked to the aircraft's unforgiving handling at low speed. The RAF flew it because there was nothing else. That context says much about the state of British aviation procurement in that era. 19. Short SC-1, United Kingdom, 1957. The Short SC-1 was Britain's first fixed-wing vertical takeoff aircraft, powered by 5 Rolls-Royce RB.108 lift engines, dedicated purely to vertical thrust, one for forward flight. It was a genuine engineering achievement, the first aircraft in the world to demonstrate a full transition from vertical to horizontal flight and back again. But in October 1963, the second prototype entered an uncontrolled roll during a hover test and struck the ground, killing its pilot, Tom Brooksmith. Investigation found a fault in the auto-stabilizer system. The program continued with the surviving aircraft, but the SC-1 never advanced to an operational design. It proved the concept and paid for it. 20. Saunders Roe SR-53, United Kingdom, 1957. Britain in the mid-1950s was seriously exploring mixed-power interceptors, aircraft that combined a conventional jet engine with a rocket motor to achieve climb rates and altitudes that turbojets alone could not reach. The SR-53 was the prototype of that thinking. Sleek, fast, and theoretically capable of intercepting Soviet bombers at extreme altitude before they could release their weapons over British cities. In testing it, performed promisingly. But in June 1958, the second prototype crashed on takeoff after engine failure, killing its pilot. The program was effectively ended not by a policy decision, but by that single moment of catastrophic mechanical failure at the worst possible point in flight. 21. Hawker Siddeley Nimrod AW3, United Kingdom, 1980. The Nimrod AW3 was a program that should never have been allowed to continue as long as it did. A conversion of the existing Nimrod maritime patrol aircraft into an airborne early warning platform. It was chosen over the proven Boeing E-3 Sentry in a decision driven by industrial politics rather than operational logic. The project ran for over a decade, consumed more than £1 billion, and produced an aircraft that never worked as intended. The avionics systems from different contractors could not be integrated. By the time the program was canceled in 1986, the RAF had no EEW aircraft and was forced to order the American system it had rejected at the outset. The cost in money and in operational capability was enormous. 22. Nimrod MRA-4, United Kingdom, 2010. The Nimrod's final chapter was its most painful. The MRA-4 maritime patrol aircraft was a new-build replacement for the aging MR-2 fleet, itself descended from the de Havilland Comet. The program began in the 1990s and was supposed to deliver a modern, capable aircraft within budget and on schedule. Instead, engineers discovered that no two Nimrod airframes were dimensionally identical. Hand-built over decades, each aircraft was slightly different, and the new wing sections designed for the MRA-4 could not be standardized across the fleet. Every aircraft required individual modification. Costs spiraled. Schedules collapsed. After spending approximately £4 billion, the program was canceled in the 2010 Strategic Defense Review. Not a single aircraft entered service. The entire fleet was scrapped. If you think we missed an experimental aircraft that deserves to be on this list, let us know in the comments below. And for more forgotten aviation disasters, secret projects, and dangerous aircraft stories, make sure to subscribe. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.